Hello guys. I didn't upload anything for last 2 weeks, I think 2 or 3 weeks. Because of a personal reason, I couldn't upload anything. Personal reason in the sense like there was a little debate and the confusion, how I choose in topic and why I choose in those topics and what's the reason and rationale behind choosing these topics and everything. So I want to take a little break and talk about different things, but somehow I couldn't make any video. Anyway, so today this topic is very significant for few reasons. I don't want to go detail about the reason why, but this video will be longer than usual videos. I don't know how long it would take. 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, I don't know. Right? But I'm going to give the time whatever it takes to this video. The reason is I was searching for similar content on YouTube for last kind of a week. Not only on YouTube, I was looking for like technical blogs, write-ups and any articles where I can find. No, nothing I could find. So I wanted to create comprehensive detailed tutorial on this topic because the absence of this content leading a lot of software engineers to go haywire or at least misdirect or at least give up about this subject. So therefore, I think we should do very in detail video. So therefore, it will take longer time, but be patient and I need you to watch every single minute of this video because this topic itself is little complicated. So therefore, if you skip, you will not going to get it, right? So I'm trying to make it smoothly, step by step with the reasoning. So every minute is important. So please watch. I want to explain what we are going to do in detail, but let me to summarize this. So why most of software engineers struggle when they go to the GraphQL? Because most of them started their career with a relational database or probably document database, right? When they think about the solution, when they think the data manipulation, they think within that box. So it's really hard to come out from that. So I'm going to take a SQL query, which is you best know, and then convert that to GraphQL and then taking that through the GraphQL Federation. And then you will see how beautifully it solves our current problem. Why this is so much important? So if you frequently watching my videos, in last few videos, I'm trying to prove a point that how GraphQL is taking over new paradigm of the microservice, right? So far we are using microservices, but how GraphQL is coming and improvements and how it make our life easy, especially on the microservice world. So we learn the fundamentals, theories, practices, and then I did a comprehensive video about end-to-end implementation with the best practices, enterprise level architectures on the GraphQL and NestJS, right? But there's a missing piece in this puzzle, right? How exactly this solving our current problem? What are the current problems and how GraphQL is playing a role where you to solve that problem? So no different, this video also complete hands-on end-to-end training. But before we go there, we need to discuss one thing. So what is the problem we have? Think something like this. Let's say you have a project, you have employees and you have locations, right? So project can have multiple employees and then this employee may belong to one location. That means one location have many employees. So in a monolithic world, you may have a giant monolithic application with these entities, right? So you have a project, you have employees, you have a location, everything in the most probably a single table, single database, right? But when it comes to microservices, basic two fundamental concept of microservices: independent deployable, independently scalable, right? When it comes to scaling, the right practice is keep your own data. Do not poke someone else's data in a database layer. If you need someone else's data, talk to them through the microservice layer, but do not talk to them on your database layer. The reason is, let's say you have an employee service today on AWS, tomorrow they may want to go to on-prem data center or they may want to go to Google Cloud, right? So if they go into Google Cloud, they should be able to take their data with them. But as a project service or the location service, if you are referring that in a database layer, you're blocking that facility, or you are blocking that path, right? So therefore you should not do that. So when it comes to the ideal microservice world, so employee service, project service and location service, those carrying their own data, right? So let's assume these are like, let's say these three services for example, and they have a three different databases. So now employee work on a project, that means project has many employees, right? Employee belong to location, that means location has many employees. So now if employee service need to show all this information, employee along with the projects he is working on and the location where the employee belongs to, then employee need to talk to project service and the location service to get those data, right? So now in the REST world, the problem is we need to give one endpoint to get the employee, we need to give the one endpoint to get the employee with projects, we need to give other endpoint to get the employee with location, we need to give other endpoint to give an employee with project and location, so many things, so many permutations, right? Yeah, there are enough ways, like you can pass a parameter, query parameters like a type equal, summary type equal with project type equal with location, and there are so many options, but still you're making it complicated, right? You have to do it. So that is how REST world works. But the problem GraphQL trying to solve is this, exactly this, right? So what the GraphQL tells you, you keep your project data, you keep your employee data, you keep your location data. Don't worry who need what, right? You don't have to query those. You just need to talk to Federation Gateway and then tell, hey, give me the employee and tell me where he belongs to and tell me what project he's working on. This Federation Gateway taking the responsibility, talking to all these GraphQL servers and take it and compose this schema and compose this response and give it back to you, right? So your employee may have 100 fields, the location may have 50 fields, and your project may have 200 fields, doesn't matter. You get just what you want, right? If you don't need the location, you just need to tell, hey, give me the employee and the project, right? If you don't need the project, hey, give me employee and the location, right? So then if you don't ask for a project, the gateway doesn't talk to project server, right? If you don't ask the location, the gateway doesn't talk to location server, right? It just talk to where you're asking to go, right? So that way you do not carrying additional data, you are not making any unwanted network calls, plus the most important thing is you don't have to write all those things happening behind the scene. So the version before the Federation was a schema stitching. It was okay, but it was little painful work. But so with the Apollo Federation technique, so we can use this federated gateway to get this done. Right, is this production ready? Or is this just a dream? That's the next question. You know, like Netflix is a kind of like pioneer on doing these type of things on this open source world, and most of their libraries contributed to open source. Since we talk about the Spring, so we talk a lot about OSS or else Netflix open source stack. So, but here also the same thing, right? So as I remember around 2018. Netflix did this like Federation experiment, and they are using in their production. So they were able to get most of their GraphQL mess into nicely divided declarative way. Each team can own their data, and other team can consume their data through this GraphQL Federation. So yes, this is working in the production. So enough introduction, let's go and see how we can do this. Okay, so first let me just show you what I was explaining before, right? So if you take a query like this, you can see here, select e.firstname, e.lastname, p.id, p.name, l.id, l.name, right? So from project P is an alias, so that's why p.id, p.name mean project.id, project.name, right? Inner join employee E, right? So that's why you have a e dot first name, e dot last name, because it's alias for the employee. On p dot id equal e dot project id. So that means we know employee table carrying the project id, right? Employee id carrying the project id which that employees belongs to. And then in a join location, right? L on L dot id equal L dot location id. Sorry, e dot location id. So that means employee table carrying two properties. It carrying project id which project this employee belongs to, and the location id which location this employee belongs to, right? So that means this relationship we can consider one to many relationship. Why? Because one employee, right, carrying the project id mean this project has many employees, one to many, right? And the location id carrying mean location has many employees, right? Okay, so now how we are going to convert this to GraphQL? So first let's split this query, right? So you can see here this query carrying three tables, right? So I added a small where clause here, right? Where PID equal this. So that means, so we give the project ID, we give a particular project, and we are going to find employees and the locations, right? Employees belong to that project and the locations of those employees. So now here, if we split this, you can see the three tables. One is a project table, other one is an employee table, and other one is a location table, right? So you can see here, select first name, last name, and so from project P, and then inner join employee E, two tables, and inner join location L. Right, so if you're looking for ER diagram, you will see this is a clearly one to many relationship, right? I want to tell you this connector is wrong. This should go in this way, right? This connector should be another way around, right? Don't worry about it, but you get the idea. Right, one project has many employees, also one location has many employees, one to many relationship, right? So now again, so this connector wrong. This tells like one employee belongs to many location. No, it's other way around. One location has many employees, right? Okay, that's why employee carrying the project ID and the location ID. If you take a microservice world, you will see, okay, let's say we practice the real exact microservice practice. So what we do, we have employee service, we have project service, and we have a location service, right? So employee service carrying employee data, project service keeping project data, location service keeping locations data. Now when the employee needs the project data, they need to talk to project endpoint, right? When the location needs the project data, it needs to talk to project endpoint. When the location needs the employee data, it needs to talk to employee endpoint, right? So therefore, you need, I mean, not exactly like this URL convention is wrong. I just wanted to push the idea, right? So don't think like, okay, I'm telling this, I should follow the right naming convention, but he also put a damn wrong naming convention, right? Don't worry about it. This is just to push the idea. So at the employee service, I may need to create an endpoint for employee with project, employee with location, employee with the project and location, right? Or this is one style. Other way, you can say employee type equal summary type equal with project type equal project and location, and so on and so forth. And the project service, you may need the projects and the projects with employees, right? The location also may have a location and location with employees. You will see you need to create many endpoints in order to get this. But also, if the employee has 100 properties, then all the hundreds you need to give with your response, right? If you want to limit this again, then you have to do so many other stuff. But in the GraphQL world, the GraphQL Federation, what you are going to do, employee just expose one endpoint called GraphQL, project just expose one employee called GraphQL, and then location also expose just a one endpoint called GraphQL. That's it. The Federation gateway do the heavy work behind this. What it does is, if you need employee with the projects, then what it does is, it take your request and it initiate the request to employee. It send the request to project. You don't have to do that. You even don't need to know right, where these servers are. You just tell, hey, give me an employee and the location. So what it does is it sends the employee and then it send the request to location and merge it and give it back to you, right? So how we can practically do this? So that is the problem. Okay, so that is what the thing what we are going to learn today. So here what I have done is I have created 3 different GraphQL servers, right? You will see here I have a project GraphQL service, I have a location GraphQL service and employee GraphQL service, right? Okay, how are we going to do this? Aren't you going to teach us how to create these services? I already did, right? So you need to go and watch my NestJS GraphQL complete course. There I exactly explain every bit and piece of this. In fact, I just took that project, right? I just took that project. In that project, we maintain a single GraphQL server to deliver employee and project. But what I have done here, I split these to 2 different services and I created brand new service following the exact principle called location service, right? All these data, as we did on that course, are stored in a Postgres database. And I created a new project called GraphQL Federation Gateway. I didn't do anything on that. It's just an empty NestJS project because I'm going to teach you that, right? I am not going to show you these 3 projects because I already did that, right? So you know how to do that. Okay, so let's go back to playgrounds and see. You can see employee endpoint, employee GraphQL server running on port 3000, right? So now you can see it has 3 employees, Professor Din and Nairobi Dan and Tokyo Alfonso, right? And then also if you get projects, it has 3 different projects. One is a Rapid, other one is a Polixia, other one is a Cosmos. It's 3 different projects, right? And if you go to location service, it has 4 locations. One is a Santa Monica, other one is a Raleigh, other one is a Colombo, and other one is a Los Angeles. So now all these 3 services are ready. Just imagine in your company, these 3 services are running by 3 different teams. You don't know each other, you don't talk to each other, but yeah, you run in 3 different separate teams. Okay, now what we are going to do, right? So I already explained in my last video how we can create these GraphQL servers. That's very simple. You just resolve a service and the repository, just connect to database. Now I'm going to expose these GraphQL servers through the Federation gateway, right? Okay, so now as I explained, now I am only maintaining my employee service. I am the tech lead for my the team who running this employee service, right? I have other tech lead who running this location service. There's other tech lead who running this project service. In the real world, what we do is if we need to have a modification or a feature or something exposed from them, we can make a ticket for their backlog, and then that when they will do it, right? Or else you can do it and you can make a pull request, right? So now, but today I'm going to do all those things, right? Let me stop all these projects. So let me stop this and stop the location as well. Gateway is not running yet because we haven't done anything to the gateway, right? Good. So you need to pay one attention. So NestJS 8 released, right? So NestJS 8, when you use a usual syntax to create a project, if you use the Apollo Express, it will install Apollo Express 3 into your project. But NestJS 8 does not mean to run with Apollo Server 3 because it needs other few dependencies, and like it will not run your project in simple because there's a bug, right? So this bug has been fixed, and now when you create the project, you need to follow the syntax in the documentation, so that documentation syntax is updated to the bug fix version. Actually, it's not a NestJS bug. It's an Apollo one, but it inherited to NestJS when you use the 3, right? So anyway, so pay your attention. If you're creating a new project, make sure you use Apollo, you use the syntax what given in the documentation, right? That's it, right? Okay, right. Since we need to do the federation, what we need to do is we need to install this federation dependency to your project, right? So this is kind of an optional dependency, but it's something good to install, right? So let's install this to employee 1, and meantime let's install to project 1, and also let's install to location, right? So I install all these dependencies to, right, okay, employee is done and project is still getting installed, and location also getting installed. Okay, good, right? So we are ready. So now that is the only dependency you need in order to make the federation work, right? Okay, so now let's go back to our scenario, right? The real scenario. So now what we need to do is, in our case, I am the person who run this let's say employee service. My requirement is, if you take now employee, only give the ID, first name and the last name. Employee doesn't aware about anything else, but I want to return project and the location with this data, right? I need to return a project and the location with this data. Also I need to see who are the other employees working with this employee. For example, I get, hey, give me employee, and okay, give me the project of this employee. And now you have a project object. In the project object, you know, project has a one-to-many relationship, right? So one project has many employees. I need to see all those employees' names as well, right? That's my requirement. Okay. So how we are going to do? So here, by nature of this example, so first you need to understand how these relationships are made. You need to put little time to analyze that and understand. So in our case, we have a one-to-many relationship, right? So better to start with this side, right? So one project has many employees, so let's go start with this side. So what we need to do is, we go to project GraphQL server, and we go to the entity, right? So the practice here, you need to expose your entities through the Federation gateway. So Federation gateway can find it, right? How we can do that? I'm going to go with the code first approach, because that is the most doable thing, right? It's going with the schema first approach is not easy, so let's go with the code first. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to add a directive here. In the directive, I'm going to tell, hey, if I send a key with the fields of ID, right? If I send a key fields of ID, so then let me to filter this project. So with this one, you tell Federation gateway, in case it's somewhere, if you need a project, just give me this key, then I will give the project for you, right? So in other words, it's kind of a supply demand, right? So a bunch of GraphQL servers is hang on the Federation gateway, tells, hey, I have this, I have this, I have this, and I have that, right? It's like a market, right? So if the gateway need the project, it will talk to this service. So we do the same thing on the employee. If the gateway need the employee, it talk to that service. If the gateway need location, it talk to that service, right? Let's go step by step so you'll understand, right? So what we did here, so we just put, hey, if you need projects, just give me the ID, then I will give the project, right? So this is nothing to do. This is nothing to do with this one, but it's always good to mention the type as ID here. It's nothing to do with the Federation. It should have done before, but since I missed it. Okay. Anyway, now good, right? So I modified the I modified the project to expose the key to the outside, right? So now there has to be a way GraphQL to Federation gateway to find the project. They send the request to get the project, but the GraphQL gateway doesn't know to use your resolver methods, right? Because it is not very specific. So what we need to do is, we need to go to this project resolver, right? And we need to implement a new method with the resolve reference, because you need to teach Federation gateway how to resolve the reference for the project, right? So I'm going to put the name as the same, but you can put any name, but it makes sense to put this name, and resolve reference. So I need a reference with, so tell me the type, right, type name in a string, right? If you don't understand this for now, don't worry, you will go there, right? So id also type of a string, right? And so what it does is I'm going to return this dot project service dot find one, right, with the reference dot id, right? So what I do here, right? So what I'm doing here is this, very simple, right? So here I am telling, if you need, so before I put the key, I exposed my key and told GraphQL gateway, hey, if you need a project at some point, I have it, right? So now you need to tell the Federation gateway how you need to request the project, right? Because the Federation gateway doesn't know to invoke one of these methods. So what the Federation gateway now will do is, it will talk to this method and it will pass the reference like this. This way, the type name is, it will ask, hey, give me a project. This is the ID I need, right? Give me the type of a project by ID of this, right? And then what you are going to do is, we have this method already, we implemented that, right, to get the find the project by ID, right? So we can implement that, right? We can return that value, right? So that's pretty much it we need to do with here. But if you see here, the generated the GraphQL schema is just ordinary schema. When you need to generate the real nice the federated schema where the Federation gateway can understand, you need to do one more thing here, right? So that is, you need to go to this app module here, instead of a GraphQL module, you need to install GraphQL Federation module, right? This one, that's it. You don't need to do anything, right? The schema file also, you can say auto schema true to run without a file and in memory, but for now I'm going to keep this so then I can show you that. Okay, right? So now first part is done, right? Are you still with me? Hopefully yes. Okay, if not, you can go back and watch again. Now, so in our journey, one piece is done. So we tell project, we tell the graph, where we configure the project so GraphQL gateway can discover us, right? So now let's go to the employee, and let's tell the same thing, right? So in an employee, what we do here, first thing, you know, we are a good software engineer, so we are going to expose this one, right? So directive, why? Because in case right, so why we do this again? Because in case gateway needs employee type object, so now you are going to expose that with this one, right? So here, so this also, let's mark this as ID. Again, this is not something required to Federation, but I do this as a best practice. Okay, right, good. So now, right, now see this one. So now here, this is my previous code. I didn't remove it, I kept this as a comment, because in my last project we had a employee and a project together. So in that case, we did this relationship within the entity level. So now this employee should have project, because that is my requirement, right? As a team lead, as my tech lead, the tech lead in this employee service team, I need to return the projects where these employees belongs to, right? So now therefore I'm going to uncomment this part, right? I'm going to uncomment this part. But here is the problem now. Problem is, I don't own project service. Project service is somewhere else, right? So if you go to this diagram, you will see this is the employee service. I only have an employee entity, right? Because project data in this project service database, I don't know what are the fields, and they completely have control on that. They can add fields, they can remove fields, they can do anything, whatever they wanted, right? So I don't know that. So therefore, I cannot maintain this project type here. That's the problem, right? So how we can solve this problem? This is how we do it. We need to create a type here, right? We need to create a type here, project.entity.ts, right? This is not exactly entity, but I go with this because then we have the same convention, right? So I have this one, so what I'm going to do is export class project, right? Export class project. This is not an entity, but I created as an entity because then we follow the same convention, right? So now what I'm going to do here, I'm not going to maintain this entity, right? This type, because this is not belongs to me. I don't know properties of this, but I'm going to tell I'm not going to maintain this, but this is going to maintain somewhere else. Where? I don't know, right? I don't know. So right here, let's mark this as an object type. So now it is belongs to query. So now I put a directive and I tell, hey, I'm not maintain this. This is going to extend from somewhere else, right? And also I'm going to tell a directive is the same our previous one, key, and then fields and ID, right? So this one, okay, so this one. So now this project also has an ID, right? So let's maintain that here. I'm going to make as a field and type is ID, right? And what I need here, the project has many employees, right? So that is what I'm going to supply, right? Because I'm the employee service. I'm going to supply these employees for this project, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a property here called employees, which is type of employee array, right? And this is a field, right? And the type is employee, right? Employee type, right? This is what I'm doing here, right? So why I'm doing this? Because project should carry employee array, because project has many employees, right? So now we have a project entity created, right? So now if you go here, now this should resolve. Why? Because we have a project type created, right? Entity created, end of the day it's become a type. So now we need to create a resolver also. Why? Because we have an entity now, right? There has to be a resolver for the entity, right? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create project.resolver.ts. Okay, so export class project resolver, right? And this has to annotate with resolver, okay. This doesn't come alone, so this is not from DNS, so this is very important, right? So NestJS GraphQL, right? So this is the resolver of project, right? So let's get a constructor here and get private read only, right? So we are in employee service type of employee service, right? So why we need this? This is important, right? Why we need this? In my GraphQL server, I have project type, right? So I created that. So in this project type has something called employees, but my GraphQL server doesn't know how to resolve this. So therefore, you need to tell GraphQL server how to resolve this, right? So remember we create something called resolve field, right? So we have done this before. Hope you remember this, right? We did this before, right? So this is very important, right? So this should match, this name should match exactly as the property you are going to resolve here, right? So you are going to resolve this one, right? Employees. So you need to make sure you match that same name, right? So how we are going to get the value? We are going to get the value from the parent, right? So we are going to get the value from the parent. Okay, and who is the parent? Parent is project, right? The type of project. Okay, and I'm going to return promise of employee array. Okay, right. So how we are going to do this? We can get this dot employee service dot, let's say I'm going to return project employees for project. So I'm going to name this method as a for project, right? So what I'm going to pass, project dot id, right? Project dot id. So now we don't have this, so we need to return this, right? So now we don't have this method. So what we can do is we go to employee service and we have this get project method. I commented that because we don't have this project service access anymore. So I'm going to create this method here for project, right? So I'm going to get the id as a string value and this, right? So what we need to do is we need to get the project id and return employees who belongs to the project id. Can I do that? Yes, I can, because I own the employee database, right? So how I'm going to do it, this dot employee repository dot find, right? Find based on what? If the project id is matched with the id what pass, then return those value, right? So I'm keeping little bugs, problems, common mistakes, so we can come back and fix those, right? Okay, for now, yes, this is fine. Now let's put a await here. Okay, so now what we have done is we created the project, right? So we create the project type and then we teach how to resolve the project, right? Who need this? Federated gateway, right? Federation gateway. Okay, so now this side is good. Now what we need to do? We need to do one more thing, right? So now, so this is important, right? So see here, right? So see here, because this is the where little confusion at. So now if you go to employee resolve itself, right? So now you can see here we have a resolve field to get the project, right? We have a resolve field to get the project. This is implemented in the last video, right? I commented that because we don't have it. Now can you get the project now? No, you cannot. Why? Because you are I am the tech lead, not the you, right? Me. I am the tech lead of employee service. I only have employee database, right? So I don't know how to get the project. But in my employee entity, right, I have a project field. How I can resolve this one, right? The project field, I use the employees. I configured the server to resolve that, right? I created a new project resolver and I configured the resolve field to resolve the employees. But now my employee carrying project reference, how I can resolve this one? Okay, I cannot do that. So then how I am going to do this? So this is the beauty of this. So see how I am going to do this. So resolve field, I am going to keep this as it is, the below one, so then you can compare, right? What is the field I am going to resolve? The project field, right? The project field I am going to resolve, right? So I am going to tell federated gateway how it can send the request to me, right? So this is important, right? Always make sure you use the exact name what you're using here, right? Because that is the field you are going to resolve, right? So how I can resolve this? I want to resolve project of whom, right? Where this project is belongs to? Project is belongs to employee, right? So then my parent is employee, right? So my parent is employee, right? Employee type object, right? So now what I'm going to do is, now I need to tell how to find this project. Do I know? No, I don't know. So therefore, I'm going to tell the Federation Gateway, hey, I can tell the type of the object you are looking for and the ID of that, right? So go and ask someone who has it. That is the where gateway come into the handy, right? So see this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell type name is project, because this is the project type object, right? Project, this is the field I'm going to refer. This one, this is the type of project, right? So I'm going to tell, hey, the object you're looking for is a project type, right? And I can tell the ID of that as well. ID is what? Employee dot project ID, right? This is the only information I have, right? Because remember in the diagram, right, we keep the project ID, right? The project has the, employee has the project ID. So therefore we can tell, hey, I can give the project ID, but you need to go somewhere and get this information someone else. Now where this go? Okay, remember the syntax. Okay, type name project, ID is employee ID. If you go back here, remember we configured this. If you go back here in the project resolver, we configure this. Hey, if someone send you this syntax, right, now here what it will come? This will come as a project. ID would be project ID. Now what we do? It go to the project service, find the project and give it to the gateway. So now what the gateway do is, gateway take it and put into here. Sorry. So see, it's clear, right? So again, if you miss that, right? So now someone is come to get the employee, right? Employee has a project field, but I don't have a project data. What I do in my GraphQL server, I tell, hey, you are looking for a project type. This is the ID you are looking for. Please go and ask whoever has it. So gateway take this and see, okay, who has project information? Okay, project server has the project information, right? It invoked the projects. I'll show you this query plan, right? So don't worry. It go to the project server and then it passed this payload, right? So what are the comes in this payload? Type would be project, because that is what we said there. ID would be employee project ID. So it passed this project ID to here and take the particular project, because from the project service, and it take it and it replace here. Beautiful, right? Okay, so now we are good over there as well, right? So little more configuration to make, but let's do the important configuration first, right? So here, because I'm going to take little errors and then going to fix it, because those are most common issues you're getting, right? But obvious errors I'm going to fix now, right? GraphQL Federation module, right? Because why? Otherwise it won't generate the right schema for us, right? But we need to do one more special thing here. We need to tell we have often type which we don't maintain and someone else is maintaining that, right? So how we can do that? We can tell here schema option, build schema option, right? And then here we can say often types, we have project, right? So it's my server, but I do not maintain this project type. That's an orphan type. You need to go and resolve from somewhere else. Okay. So let me to run this and then show you what is the difference of schema, right? So this is the current schema we have, right? Let me to run this. Okay. So you will see this generate to complete different file. See, now you can see here the keys and everything what we add over there, it generated as a schema. See, key, right, extends, right, object interfaces and providers, resolvers, it did all those things. Okay, cool. So now let's run the project service as well. So now both servers are individually running, right? So now we need to go back and add these to our federated gateway, right? How we can do that? This is just a vanilla project. I haven't done anything with this. So let's delete these unwanted files first. Okay, and then okay, app module here, you don't need these two lines, and then you don't need these two, right? So what we need to do is we need to install dependencies to this, because I haven't installed any dependency, right? So what we do is we go back to GraphQL quick start, and this is the what I told you, right? So this syntax has been modified to update new one. So now you install this here, and we need one more dependency. Okay, so we need to add one more dependency. This is the gateway dependency, right? So this dependency only we need to add into the gateway, right? We don't need to add this dependency anywhere else, right? Only this gateway. So now what we do is we are going to import that GraphQL gateway module dot for root. Okay, and we need to add the configure object, right? So we need to add the server, and here we need to add any options like for you, but for now I'm going to just add the cause to true, because to make sure this doesn't break because of the cause errors. And we need to add gateway, right? And then here we need to add a service list, right? So service is the array of object, right? So here we need to add so let me to take like this, right? So name, right? So my name is employees, right? So where this can find the employee, URL is http localhost 3000 and GraphQL, right? So I need to do this same thing for projects, right? Here it's projects and it's 3001, right? So still we didn't configure location, right? Because we are going to come back and configure this, because it's almost same. I want to make it simple as much as I can, right? So now I'm going to start the gateway. So now what the gateway does is, when it's starting, it talks to these two endpoints and get their service breakdown, right? So they go to talk to service, they ask what are the types you have, what are the queries you have, mutations, everything, right? So let's do this. npm run start dev, right? So this is run on a port 4000. This is run on a port 4000. I configured to port 4000, right? This is just a classic Nest project, right? Nothing bigger than that, right? So this is what I told you, right? So now I told, right, I just purposely added few mistakes, because these are the common mistakes what most of engineers does, right? So if everything works happily, when you go to do this, it doesn't work for you, right? Then you will confuse why it's only work for him, right? Okay, so let's fix it. These are very simple common mistakes, right? Okay, so you can see here it tells I cannot build a schema, right? Because it's trying to talk to these two services and trying to build a schema. It says project ID field, projected ID already exists in the schema. It cannot be defined in this type of extension, right? And before it says key directive specify the ID field which has no matching external field, right? Employee project has a key field directive specify the ID which has no matching external. Okay, so let's go to, it says employee service and project, right? So this is why I introduced this to show you, right? So go to the employee service and then extract these entities and go to project. It says in the project entity, right? So now you can see here, I'm going to maintain an ID. But the problem is, can I maintain ID? No. Why? Because I don't own it, right? I don't own this entity. So I need to tell here, put the directive, and I need to tell here, hey, I'm not own this. So this is the external one. Someone else owning this, right? So now, okay, that means that issue is fixed, right? Remember, I just add that mistake on purpose, because usually what you do is just add and the field, ID and the field. That's how you do, right? But when you do this one, you need to explicitly tell, I am not maintaining this one, right? Okay, so this is some point we need to talk a little bit. That's why I keep this error on purpose, so then I can catch you here. Okay, so this is how it works. You well know double OP principle, right? Extends, inheritance. Okay, so if you have a human class, you extend human class and create a man class, and then you can add more features. Then you can extend the man class and you can create a sportsman or employee or someone and create that. So what you do is, in inheritance, you extend something and you add more features to that, right? The same principle apply here. You can see here, we added extends keyword, right? What the extends tell, this is a project which I don't own, someone else own this, right? So I don't have all the properties. Please give me all the properties, whoever defined that. But I'm going to add one more thing to that, right? Oh, you always extend if you need to add one more thing, right? So you tell I'm extends this and I'm going to add the employees. But in the meantime, you need to tell I don't maintain this. So make sure you take this ID from somewhere else. It is not your one. It is somewhere else. So that is the where this directive comes. Okay, cool. So now let's stop this and run again, right? So this is the one downside of this. So whenever you change something, you need to publish that to Federation Gateway. But I'll tell a solution for that as well. Right, so now the employee service is running. So now go back to the gateway and run the gateway service. Okay, so now gateway is peacefully running, right? So go back here and let's create a new tab and get localhost 4000 GraphQL, right? So this is my gateway playground, right? So now usually this is the one you expose to front end, right? These three you don't expose to front end because you don't they don't need it, right? You give a one stop. Okay, so now if you see the schema, you will see we have queries, right? So we have so this we need to rename, right? Get all employees, right? And get all projects. Now you have a project and the employee type. If you go to the project type, you can see it has an employee array, right? So let's see whether this is working, right? Query. So what the query you're going to make is get all projects, right? So what you're going to get is ID and the name, right? So let's see whether that's working. Yeah, that's working fine. No problem with that. So now I'm going to tell, hey, give me employees, right? Who are the employees belongs to this project. And what I need of the employees, first name and the last name. Okay, so let's run this. Oh, now it says internal server error, right? So I add this to debug one other point. So see this one. Cannot return null for non-nullable field project.employee. So that means it tells your employee is null. How that come? Your project has employees, right? How that come? Okay. So this is how we debug this one. Okay. Now what we do is in this playground, you can see here you have something called query plan. It's the very bottom, right? So see here this one, query plan, right? So you have a tracing and the query plan. So what you need to do is you need to enable that and you need to run this query. Now when you run that query, oops. So let me to drag it here, right? So when you run this query, you will see it tells you how GraphQL plan to run this query, how the gateway plan to run this query. It says This is a sequence query because there is no option to parallel, but when you add the location, you will see the parallel, right? So now it says go to the project and get all the projects, and then go to employee service, right? Why? Because project has employees, we need to resolve that, right? Go to the employee service and go here and then get past the type name and the ID, because that is the syntax we have given, right? Who written the type name and ID? From the project. Okay, so now you pass it and get the employee information. This is the query plan, right? So now you can see here, this part is success, but we need to make sure whether it's go and hit our employee service, right? So how we can do that? We go to here, we go to employee service and go to employee resolver, right? So employee resolver, okay, this one. And so we have a project resolver also here to get the employees, right? So this is the where it resolve the employees. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the console log and say, hey, resolving employees, because this is supposed to do this, right? For what? Project.id, right? So I'm going to save this, right? So this now these things you don't need to restart the gateway because it's just a feature modification of your service itself, right? So now let's go back here and execute one more time and come back. It does not print that, right? It does not print that. That means it doesn't come here, right? It doesn't come here. Okay, so now let's mark this. We are going to resolve what? We are going to resolve employees, right? We are going to resolve type of employees. Okay, so now I start that and I go to the gateway just to make sure I restart the gateway and run this. No luck. Are we getting this? No, we need to go back here and see here. No, we are not still getting it. Okay, so now we need to go to the next level. Right, so now what happens is we got a problem and we just suspect few things and those didn't work, right? So now we need to go for next level. Okay, so I kept like 3 mistakes in my code purposely because these are the most common mistakes developers does, right? So now next level I'm going to do is just a glance through the code and see did I miss anything, right? That's what you should do in any case, right? So then there I'm going to fix 2 issues I kept on purpose, but that won't fix this issue, right? But let's go. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I just close everything, right? And I go back from the beginning. Okay, so where we started from the project service. So I go to project service and I go to entity. Just let's go with me and just see whether you can notice these issues, right? So directive is done and then there is nothing me to do there, and go to project resolver, right? And we add one more field and resolve reference, and here there's nothing wrong with this, right? So only these 2 changes we have done. So now we go to employee service and the employee service. So we go to employee service. In the employee service, what we have done is we go there, we create a project entity, right? So we annotated with the directive and we told this this is going to extend, and also we told this is going to modify, this is going to maintain externally, and we are returning arrays. That's fine. And we get project resolver, right? And here I kept little small mistake, right? So if you see here, I am returning employee array, but here I just use an employee object, but don't worry, that won't going to fix our issue, right? So anyway, I fixed that, right? So now we come back to employee, so project resolver and the employee resolver, right? So there also we add this change, right, of, and we are returning project. Is nothing much we did here, right? And then we added everything and we come back to employee service and we told this is open type, and we go here app module and we configured this as an open type, but we missed one thing, right? Because this is very important. You should do that then and there, because if you miss it, it drag to the end of the project and you get defects and where you have no idea how that happened, right? So my practice is I do all those practices whenever I code. I don't keep that to the end, but in this here I kept that to the end to teach you a lesson, so don't do that, right? So if you remember, we created a resolver. Remember, we create a project entity, right, in the employee service. And employee service, after project entity, we create a project resolver. This one, we did this by hand. But what we didn't do is we did not added this to the providers list. So NestJS doesn't know how to invoke this, right? So if you go to employee module.ts, you can see here this resolver is not included. So let's do project resolver. Okay, so that's it. That will restart the project. Yes, it's restarted. So let's go back and let's see whether it's worked. It worked, right? So it worked. Right, so now you can see here the project Rapid, you don't have anyone. You can see project Polixia, you have a Professor Dean and Nairobi, and also project Cosmos, you have a Tokyo Alfonso, right? So now it's good. So now let's see whether it's working other way around, right? So now when you get all the projects, you have employees, right? So when you get the employees, ideally you should get the project as well, right? Query and get all employees. Okay, so get the first name and get the last name and get the project, right? So what I need is project name. Okay, so let's run this query. It worked, right? So now you can see here. So now my next requirement, when I want to get someone, I want to see who are the other people working with this person, right? So now if it's a REST world, now you need to write a new endpoint, right, to do that. So now here what you need to do is you get the project and you tell, hey, tell me who are the other employees who work with this person, right? First name and the last name, right? Okay. So now if I run this, you will see Professor Dean work on the Polixia, then all the employees and Professor Dean and Nairobi, right? So I mean, yeah, you had to skip this. So now Nairobi. So now if you get the employees Nairobi, work in the Polixia and the professor, right? Tokyo, work in the Cosmos, there is no one else, right? So see this, right? You can do whatever you want, right? So up to the extent you want. You don't have to write any more endpoints. You just have one endpoint, you have everything, right? Because I mean, in the REST world, if you wanted to get this type of behavior, you need to add one more object, right? Give one more endpoint, employee with projects, right? So project with employees, then employee with, then that employee should have other project, right? So JSON Nick knows and so many things to do, right? But here, you just run one endpoint, you're done, right? So now, what we need to do is, we need to here, if you go to query plan, and you can see here, it runs as a sequence, because first I need to get the project, and then only I can go and get the employees, right? You can see here, it first fetch the project, and then it go and fetch the employees, right? So now what I'm going to do is, I'm going to include the locations as well. So that one I'm going to do very quickly, because it's almost similar, right? So what we need to do is, if you go to this diagram, so one to many side you have this one. Right now, one to many, right? The many side is the, again, employee, the one side is the location, right? So what you need to do is, you get the location service and go to here entity, right? And now you need to do this. Okay, right, this is a challenge, right? So just catch me where I do mistakes, right? So see, if you can catch me on the go, you're great. Okay, so let's do this. Directive at key fields ID, right? So that's it. So that's the only thing I have to do, and I go to location resolver, right? I need to tell how it can resolve this type, right? Resolve reference, and reference would be underscore type name, it will be string. I'm not going to explain this here, ID, and it would be string as well, right? And here how I'm going to do is this dot location service dot find one and find by ref.id, right? So I need to return this, right? Find my mistakes. Okay, I'm going to give you a gift. Okay, good. So this is done, right? So let me to close all, right? So let me to stop this project as well. By the way, that was the debug entry, so the employee, so this was the debug entry we added in the when we debugging. Okay, right? So now everything is stopped. Okay, good. So now we're done with the location, right? So we go back to the menu side again, employee, right? So here what you need to do is, here in the entity you need to create one more entity called location dot entity dot ts, right? Export class location and object type, right? Directive key fields ID, okay, and we need to tell this is extends, right? ID string and field type ID directive external, right? And then here we need to tell who are the employees belongs to this location. Oops. Employee array, so here this is again field. I made a mistake here, you need to catch it. So field type of array of employee, right? So I did a mistake. Did you catch it? I don't want to drag into but next one I'm going to drag, right, until run. So here I purposely miss @ sign. Okay, so these directives should go with the @ sign. Okay, so I fix it here because I'm lazy to come back, but next time I won't fix that. Okay, so now location is done. So I need to create a location. So what I'm going to do is location resolver, location dot resolver dot ts, right? I go back to project resolver and I copy this and I put it here. Export class location resolver, right? So here I need to decorate this with resolver. Again, it's only come from the DNS, so I'm going to manually add NestJS GraphQL, right? So this is the resolver of location. oops, not the GraphQL, it's employee slash entity slash location. Okay, so here this need to import and this need to import, this all field need to import, parent need to import, and here is not the project location, right? Okay, this for location, right? So I'm not going to explain this because you already know these things, right? So I'm going to remove this because I don't want it, right? So remember, I copy paste, so that means it's lead to do mistakes, right? So go back to employee service and create new one called async for location, and again get the ID, it's a string, right? So here I'm going to copy this same thing, but this time it's not a project ID, it's a location ID. Okay, so now it says location ID is not there. So now what you need to do is go to entity, here employee entity, right? So you need to add a similar thing as a location ID, right? So good. And also now employee should have location, right? So location, and it's a location. So this is a field, type location, right? So let's make to import location from location.entity, and now we'll go back to location entity we created. So we have this, and now we go to employee resolver, right? So we create the resolve field for project. So now I'm going to create the resolve field for location, right? So location, and it would be location, and it would be location ID, right? Pretty easy, right? So once you've done one, changing rest of things is very easy, right? So make sure I have a location imported, no. So because when you deal with the location, that's need to be very careful, because location come explicitly here, so that will break your code, right? So entity and location.entity, okay? So that will break your code. So it's good. So now I go back to app module, and here I need to tell location also of an edge. So I don't want to do the same mistake and come back and fix. So I go into module TS, and I'm going to tell, hey, I have created location resolver as well, right? But hope you caught my mistakes, okay? Right, so now I'm good with that. So now I go back to my gateway service, right here, and I'm going to add locations as well, right, in a 2, right? Okay, so now let's close everything, and let's run one by one. And I did a small mistake, hope you caught it, right? Let's do this. So let's run employee and see what happened. Oh, I must admit this is not something I intended to happen. Okay, Okay, right. I know why this is, but this is not something I made purposely. This I forgot this. So what happens is, if you go to the database, you can see here we have an employee fed database and we have a location fed database, and you have a project fed database, right? So these three databases are independent, right? It can be in one in Oracle, one in the Postgres, and one in the MySQL. But here I use all three in the Postgres, right? So what the point here? Each service has their own database. The problem with this one, in this approach, I just enabled location service. So now it has the data on the location fed database, but my employee fed database do not have the column called location ID, right? So because right, so this do not have the location ID column, right? So let's go and add that. Create a column, location ID, and the definition is it's a UUID column, right? Right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy the right IDs from location database to this employee database. Of course, I understand if I truncate the table, that's the right way. I can delete all the tables and run the service again. Then it will create empty tables. Then I can insert the data manually. But sake of time, I'm not going to do that. I'm lazy to insert all those data again. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add those records manually. Okay. Okay, good. Let's run and see what happened. So employee now it should work. Yes, it worked. And then let's run the project. And the location is the one I introduced a little small mistake. Let's see whether I get that mistake. Yeah, this one. So hopefully you notice this. So here in the fields I just little misspelled, so to make sure whether you're getting it or not. Even if you notice this, you're brilliant, and if you didn't notice it, you need to pay more attention when you're coding. Okay, right, so let's go back here. Cool, let's add that, and now starting. Okay, so now everyone is good. So now let's run the gateway, right? So now everything is up and running. So now let's go back and see here, so whether our previous one is working properly, like good. So now I want to take here employee, projects, and also let's go and get all employee, right? Get all employees. For a moment I'm going to remove this, right? I want to have their project, as well as I need to know their location, which location there belongs to, right? Which location that belongs to, I want to know that as well, right? So if I run this now, here it says again that not nullable problem. I told you, right? So I'm going to do a small mistake to see whether you're going to notice or not, because this is a similar thing what we have done to the projects. Ideally you should have noticed that, right? So anyway, right, to make sure, let's go in the other way around, right? So let's get the query, and I'm going to get the location, right? Let's say get all locations, right? And here I'm going to see who are the employees in this location and their first name, right? Let's see this. So it worked, right? That side is working. So if I get the data, right, so I can see all the employees who are belongs to this location, right? So let's say get the location name as well, right? So location ID and the name. Okay, so now let's get the last name as well, right? So now I can see in Santa Monica you have Nairobi and the professor, and Raleigh you don't have anyone, Colombo you don't have anyone, Los Angeles you don't you have a Tokyo, right? So now But other way around, when you going from employees, right? So I did a similar type of mistake because to show you, right? So when you go from the employees to location, it says no, I can't do this, right? But if you remove the location, right? If you remove the location, now it's working, right? So by the way, you will think this video is longer than usual video, but still why you purposely introducing some issues and why you killing time? But here's the problem. So this type of area, which is since a lot of developers are not expert, so usually they tend to do these mistakes, right? So that's why I introduced this purposely. If you notice the mistake I have done is great, right? Then you're a very great developer. But if you really noticed it before, I'm going to show you now, right? Before this, just comment. But if you're not, don't worry. But eventually you will get there, right? So I did two type of mistakes. One is that the typo thing to see whether you noticed. The second one is a conceptual mistake, right? So here's the point, right? So we learned in the last video the GraphQL and so when NestJS GraphQL implemented the NestJS, we need to adhere to the NestJS practices as well as the GraphQL practices, right? So now if we check this again, so you will see here it take the employee information, but the problem comes it doesn't take it from the location. So now if you go here, right, the problem is we need to see whether employee is responding to this, right? So how you can do is you can go to employee service and you can go to location resolver, right? So not the location resolver, the employee resolver. Here you can see, you can add the console log and saying, right? Because this is, you know how it works, right? The request goes to employee, the employee entity has a location property. Now it's trying to see, now it's trying to resolve it, right? So what the trick we have done here, we don't know how to resolve location from the employee because location data stays somewhere else. So what we have done is we send the type and the ID, right? So returning location type, right? So I want to see whether this location type is returning properly, right? So now so employee service need to redeploy, probably it happened automatically, yeah. So now let's execute this, right? So now it says returning location type. That means the request comes to employee service and it properly returning my location type. Now what we do is we go back to the location service. Let's close everything to avoid the confusion. So let's go back to the location service, right, and see whether we are getting it, right? So we are returning the type. Now it's supposed to come back to here, right? So now we have a debug statement here. Let's go to the location console, right? So now it's executed. So now it doesn't print. That means, this is very important, that means we are returning the type from the employee, but it doesn't hit to the location. So what is the problem? The last service, the problem I introduced, I did not added the resolvers properly to the NestJS providers, right? But this time I did that. So now what is the problem? This is the problem, right? So when it comes to the gateway, now see what you do here, okay? So I understand it takes time, but this is important, right? So if you go here, right, in this employee resolver, you are sending this type, location type to the gateway, right? So now gateway sees I have 3 in GraphQL servers who's returning location information, right? So it need to find the location resolver. So now he is the location resolver. But why gateway don't send it to here? Because here, when I create the resolver, I did not say what is the type is going to resolve for us, right? It resolving location. That's very important. It's returning location, right? So now ideally this should work. Yeah, it worked. Right? So now there's one more point, right? So see here, now it's a sequence, right? Because of course it need to get the employee and then you send the location information to get the location. But if we ask location and the projects both, right? So if you use a REST service, you need to like get the employee information and then you need to manually send the two calls to get the project information and get the location information. But see what happened when we do here. I am saying, hey, I need the project name also, right? So now see here, right, it's a sequence. Now when I execute this, now it says here is a sequence, but when you go here it's a parallel, right? It's a parallel. This is important. So what are the parallel things it does? It send these requests parallelly, right? So if you get this, it send get information the location and also information the project. It send those parallelly, right? So that's the beauty of this, right? So it take employee information first and then it has two fields to resolve. One is a location, one is a project, right? So employees in the employee resolver, what we have done is just written the project type and the project ID and location type and the location ID. Now gateway has a responsibility. I have two things to resolve, right? Does this depend each one? No, it's very independent. So what it does is it send parallelly to the location GraphQL server and the project GraphQL server, take this information and merge it and return it back, right? So see this one. Now I want to see who are the employees in this location, right? I can say employees, right, first name, right? Likewise, like previously. See, so now it says, hey, Nairobi, and Nairobi is in Santa Monica, and Nairobi and the professor both are in Santa Monica, both are in the same location, right? And then you have a here you don't have anyone, right? So if you get the professor, I don't know, that's their project. If you get the professor, right, it's the same thing. And if you get the Tokyo live in Los Angeles, and then no one else is there, right? See, now if you need like a project name and employees on this project, right? If you need to get this information, first name, right, you can do it, right? So now this everything is exposed, right? So now you can see it create this graph, it's sending every here and there and collect your data and send it back to you, right? So if you happen to do with the rest, just think how many endpoints you need to write, how many logic you need to think. But here what you have done is you just created the project GraphQL server, and then you create the employee GraphQL server, and then you get the location GraphQL server. It doesn't matter how many, right? And you just build just tell, right? So you have the project, and in the employee you extend it because you don't maintain it, right? So what you need to do is project GraphQL server just give the project information. It doesn't give employees who are in the project. So as a team, developers in the employee service team, you need to add some more features to the project. What you do is you take the project, you extend it, and then you add the project employees, right? And also you extend the location, right? The location just gives the location information. It doesn't say who are the employees on this location, right? So you can take this. So now you can tell get all locations, right? And here this get all locations and the employees on this location, and also you can tell, right, the projects these each employee work, right? So you can tell here, right, if you get the Santa Monica, the Nairobi work is there and she's working on the Polixia, right? The professor is there, is working on Polixia. And then Raleigh, you don't have Colombo, you don't have Los Angeles, you have Tokyo, work on the Cosmos, right? See how these things graph goes together. Okay, so I try to explain simple as much as I can and step by step very clearly. Yes, I introduced few issues to the project purposely, and then I fixed that because those are the common mistake you do. So I understand it took longer time, and I'll try to add the chapters as well, so you can go it, right? So now what you need to do when you think about your next project, just think this awesome technology to use, right? So try with a smaller project if you're not confident, and then you can have it. But this is very important. Your developers must have proper understanding about the GraphQL. Okay, end of the course, I have a very important notice to you. This is kind of a red bolded text notice. Apollo does not recommend you to use the GraphQL service discovery the way we did, right? So that means like just put in the URL to the Apollo gateway. Rather, they recommend you to use their schema registry. You can publish your schemas to their schema registry, schema manager, and then your Apollo gateway can talk to the schema registry and download those schema information, the services information, right? So that is their recommended way, because when you deploy this on your local network, there can be multiple reasons this discovery doesn't work as expected. So therefore, make sure if you're going to production, yeah, you can try. In case if you get the problem, don't just think this is a GraphQL design problem. So it's better to go for the schema registry. Okay, so then it's long video. It's like 4:35 a.m. in the morning. We learn a lot. I don't think you will get everything in the one go, so it's better to watch again, and make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't subscribed, because we have this type of more advanced topics to discuss here, right? And also I'm going to do various content, so make sure you subscribe, and also you share this channel with other friends as well, and put a thumbs up and put a comment if you like this video, because then YouTube algorithm will catch this video and take those videos to more people. Okay, so then stay safe, take care, see you soon again.